What's up, A to Z Sports Live on this Friday? Glad to have everybody along. Jack Gentry in with me this morning as Sam does not sound very good today as he's a little under the weather with the voice thing going on. So hopefully Sam will be all right over the weekend. But we're going to talk today about quarterbacks and first-round draft prospects and a positive development around a couple guys who have absolutely been linked to the Tennessee Titans in the first round. So we'll discuss the S2 tests and what that is and really how it's kind of like the new Wonderlic of the NFL draft process. So Jack and I will dive deep into that, kind of educate and discuss what the S2 tests are. So Jack's got some insight on that. Also, a little background on the S2 testing. So we'll dive into it and find out where these top four quarterbacks in the draft kind of found themselves when it came into the S2 testing. And then one guy, not so good, but the Titans prospects had a positive development when it came to these tests. And we'll ask, what kind of stock do you put into these tests? And then how do you feel about Anthony Richardson and then Will Levis scoring fairly high in their test as well? So we'll dive deep into that, Jack. And then it's Friday, which means ain't that good news to send us all to the weekend. So Jack, welcome in. Welcome back. It's been a bit, but I got something off the top that we'll talk about with the NFL draft where people will be seeing you a lot coming up NFL draft weekend. But how's it going this morning?
It's pretty good. I feel like Drew Bennett, the emergency quarterback, called into action.
Yeah.
But look, if there's a day that I want to be in here, it's going to be Friday. Not that I don't want to be here any other day, but the Friday vibes in the chat are always so high. Let's get it going today. Let's have a great day. While you guys are trickling in, make sure to share the show. So if you're watching on Facebook, share it to your Titans groups. If you're watching on Twitch, tweet that link or text that link to all your Titans text groups. If you're watching on Twitter, it's simple. Just hit that retweet button. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you turn those notifications on. The early birds in here, I'm sure you already do. But if you don't, tap that bell at the top of your screen. Make sure you get your notifications on so you get an update every time A to Z Sports goes live. Austin, let's do this thing.
Yep, let's do it officially. Welcome into A to Z Sports, powered by BetMGM. I'm Austin Stanley. He's Jack Gentry from the Tighten Up podcast here on the show. Today, make sure you follow us all over social media as we are Nashville's on-demand sports talk network, going live weekday mornings at 8 Central Time on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Links to the show segment by segment on our Twitter timeline, and also hit us up on Instagram and TikTok for more Titans coverage. Got to thank our sponsors before we get going this morning because they always make the show happen and help out you, and they help out our make our content free as always. Wilson County Hyundai, make them a part of your new car buying process by seeing them in Lebanon or simply at wilsoncountyhyundai.com. The Bone and Joint Institute, boneandjointtn.org, the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine care. Farm Bureau Health Plans, get better with Farm Bureau Health Plans, better coverage rates and service. Learn more about a health plan for you, fbhp.com/ATOZ. And we introduced him yesterday for the first time, Aura, who is all about keeping you safe from the dark web. You can use our link, aura.com/ATOZ. That's AURA.com/ATOZ for a 2-week free trial and see how many data brokers are sharing your information. Jack, I've had 30 data brokers who had my information, and now 6 of them do not because Aura said, get the heck out of here over that. So free trial for 2 weeks there, right there, aura.com/ATOZ. Okay, guys. So Jack, we're going to talk a lot today about the S2 tests, and it's kind of like the new Wonderlic. I don't remember the last time I've heard about the Wonderlic tests and the Wonderlic scores that came out of the NFL Combine when it comes to these players. But the S2 test seems like it's the new age Wonderlic of trying to figure out how these college prospects can do with their cognitive functions. So give us a little background, Jack, if you can, about the S2 test and what it is and how it just kind of popped up on our radars.
Well, I mean, the S2 test has kind of taken off in the last few years. It's more football relevant than the Wonderlic, where the Wonderlic, you kind of, it's really just an IQ test. And there are always going to be outliers. Like just because you're not book smart doesn't mean you're football smart, and vice versa. But really, with the Wonderlic, I mean, it could only hurt you as a quarterback. Like, nobody cared if you were in the mid-20s on the Wonderlic. If you got like a 12 or below, like a VY score, I mean, you were in big trouble. So what this is, the S2 test, they call it the 40-yard dash of like just mental and cognitive abilities. So it's like the 40-yard dash for your brain, essentially. And it was founded by a couple of Vandy guys. Of course it was. Vanderbilt's, this has to go down as one of Vanderbilt's biggest NFL contributions in the history of the sport.
Probably.
But it's a couple guys, they were studying Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So they're big neuro dudes. And what it is essentially is it's a rapid fire 45-minute test that tracks how well you make decisions on the fly. And for quarterbacks, this is very important. Quarterbacks test the highest. Obviously, safeties test the second highest, both in charge of a lot of different people on the field at the same time. And in this test, they'll do simple things like they'll have 22 different items on the field. They're all red squares. Find the red triangle as quick as you can. And you just keep going. It's very boom, 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 boom. And which you need to have as a quarterback. Like the Wonderlic, sure, you can be book smart. You can have a high IQ as a quarterback. But are you able to read a zero blitz? Can you make a snap decision with a blitz in your face? This test is more accurate with that. And it got more popular because Brock Purdy last year, Mr. Irrelevant, knocked this test out of the freaking park. He scored a 97. This is out of 100. Anything over 80 is considered elite. Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, 97. And, of course, he has the year that he has. The injury sucks. But, I mean, I think everybody believes that Brock Purdy's a guy who's going to be around for a little while in San Francisco. So, I mean, it's like chess in a way, like the like good chess players, you can win some games, with 20 minutes to make a decision. But when you play speed chess, that really separates the wheat from the chaff. And that's what the S2 kind of is for quarterback.
Are you out here playing speed chess on the weekends, Jack?
I don't know why I use that reference because checkers is my game. I never came around to chess.
Oh, I suck at both checkers and chess. So if you suck at checkers, you're definitely not good at chess. So yeah, so here's kind of what this S2 test does. Perceptive speed, search efficiency, tracking capacity, visual learning, instinctive learning, decision complexity, distraction control, impulse control, and improvisation. So I mean that those are quarterback traits, right? And you mentioned safety traits. So would you say 68 is the average out of 100 for quarterbacks, where the rest of the positions average around a 50 out of 100? But obviously Brock Purdy very high at a 97. That's a pretty interesting thing.
Yeah, quarterbacks test the highest, safeties test the second highest. Behind them is cornerbacks. Kansas City, the highest tester last year was Trent McDuffie, who started as a rookie for the Chiefs on the outside. And, so, I mean, they've tested over 40,000 athletes. Like, in the grand scheme of things, that's pretty big. And it's been around since 2015. So they've had some years to develop it. And, I mean, a lot of GMs are now very interested in this. Like, the Wonderlic doesn't matter anymore. This S2 test, this is the new thing that they're judging, a passer's mental capacity and just cognitive ability to make decisions on the fly. And it mentioned impulsivity. You got to making quick decisions is great, but being impulsive hurts you at the quarterback position. This kind of filters that out. And quarterbacks like Drew Brees, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, they've all tested in the mid 90s. So if you test high, you've got a lot to gain, and your stock's going to improve in the NFL draft.
For sure. So Lance Zierlein was doing, I believe, a Boston radio show, and who has been a NFL draft mocker for NFL.com and a bunch of other different outlets, was talking about this crop of first round quarterbacks. And something that I hadn't heard or really seen the results that came out. But let's listen to this clip from this week about the top 4 quarterback prospects, and one in particular who did not do very well with the S2 testing.
I know that the rumors around the league, the rumors that I have heard is that CJ Stroud did not score great on this S2. And there are a lot of teams, and I don't know if the Texans are one of them, to be honest with you. There are a lot of teams who highly value the S2 test because it's a processing test. It's a decision making. We had the guy on from yesterday, right? So it has been predictive. The very best quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, those are three guys who have scored very high on S2. Brock Purdy was the highest scorer last year, and he did well. Now, he's also on a very quarterback-friendly scheme.
Right.
Now, the question is asked of those guys, has anyone ever become a good quarterback who scored low? The answer over the last 7 years so far has been no. No one has. And the rumor is that I've heard, not through teams but through other sources, is that C.J. Stroud's number is pretty low. And Bryce
C.J. Stroud number pretty low on the S2. And I did see this also. This is coming from Aaron Wilson, who covers the NFL out of Houston. He said and wrote an article that Anthony Richardson knocked the S2 cognitive test, quote, out of the park. And that also Bryce Young was the highest scorer this year, according to his sources. And then as well, and Will Levis also scored high in this. So when you look at the four quarterbacks on the graphic right there, the top four quarterbacks in this draft per everybody, right? Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Richardson, and Levis, three of them scored well and did very well on this, with Bryce being the highest, Levis scoring high, and then Richardson knocking it, quote, out of the park, but then CJ Stroud being fairly low. So let's start this now, Jack. Let's ask this question to the audience just about this S2 test overall before we specifically talk about the Titans aspect of it. How much stock do you put into S2 scores for quarterbacks in the draft? We've got three options: a lot, a little, or none. How much stock do you put into these S2 scores? A lot, a little, or none? We'll get to your comments here in a second, but first let me tell you guys about Wilson County Hyundai. WilsonCountyHyundai.com is where to go for your new vehicle. Make them a part of your new car buying process. Yeah, I'm not telling you have to buy from Wilson County Hyundai, but make them a part of that process. Go see what they have to offer and how they can help you out with your new ride and whatever your situation is. They've got 0% APR for several models, including the Santa Fe, the Sonata, and the Tucson, going on right now at WilsonCountyHyundai.com. So you can check that out. Go see him in Lebanon. Payne Bones, a great guy. He's been running Wilson County Hyundai for a long time, a family-owned dealership there in Lebanon. And that also means you don't have to pay those downtown prices when it comes to your next vehicle. The Hyundai brand is growing. It's bigger. It's great. It's technology savvy and on the forefront of that. So check them out, WilsonCountyHyundai.com.
BetMGM, also very savvy. Look, if you're looking for a new sports book to join, if you have a hunch about the draft, BetMGM is going to be the place where you want to cash in on all of these different draft props. And there's a million of them. So listen, if you're a new user, plug in our code A to Z Sports. That's ATOZ Sports. And you'll receive a risk-free bet up to $1,000. It's a bonus bet. So if you don't win your first bet, no sweat. It's a use A to Z Sports and you'll receive up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win that first bet. When you register with BetMGM, you'll get an instant access to a variety of parlay selection features, live betting options, player props, and daily boosted odds specials for those MLB fans and NHL fans and NBA fans. It's a great time to be a sports fan. There's a couple leagues heading into the playoffs. MLB's just getting off the ground. Find out why BetMGM is the king of sportsbook. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to play responsibly and offer resources to help you make appropriate choices. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. 21 years of age or older to wager, Tennessee only, new customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. First online real money wager only. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets. Bonus bets expire 7 days from issuance. For problem gambling support, call the Tennessee Red Line, 800-889-9789.
All right, Jack. So the question we've asked everybody is, how much stock do you put in to the S2 cognitive test? And we'll get to your comments. We asked, three options for us right here: a lot, a little, or none. Here are the traits that the cognitive S2 test does help us with: perception speed, search efficiency, tracking capacity, visual learning, instinctive learning, decision complexity, distraction control, impulse control, and improvisation. And so what we've learned over this draft process is when you've got these four quarterbacks with S2 testing. Bryce Young, check mark, passed it, the highest grade out of this quarterback group. Anthony Richardson, quote, knocked it out of the park. And Will Levis, another high score. And we just heard Lance Zierlein say that CJ Stroud scored fairly low on his test. So, Jack, I'll send you the comments. What are people saying? How much stock do you put in it? A lot, a little, or none? A lot, a little, or none? What are the people saying here?
Titans Kyle says a little. Eric says none. Tall Texan says less than none. Steven's got a little. Charles thinks he's going to – Charles putting a lot of stock into this.
Okay.
Steven says a little. Scott Weaver, same page. Guy Mann, also a little. Borkington, a lot from him. Denise says a little. Got to make quick decisions. Well, that's what the S2 test helps determine. How quick of a decision maker really are you? David Dandy says a little. Andre says, you know what? I've never heard of it before now, so I don't know. LOL. Look, it's fairly new to me as well, so you're not alone there, Andre.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm thinking too, it's like, we tried to do our best of explaining it as well as we can. And Jack gave the background of the Vandy grads that put this together after they were working on Parkinson's. And this is way better of a tool than the Wonderlic whatever was when it came to the brain side of the game of football, where quarterbacks and safeties generally grade the highest per position. And that makes a lot of sense overall. So I'll let you go back to the comments.
NJ Titans fan, a lot. Tighten up says a little. Devin says a little. Yuri says not a damn thing. Game is played on the field. Sure, but quarterback is the most mentally demanding position in all of professional sports. You got to be sharp upstairs to be able to contribute.
Yeah, and your brain is also on the field with you when you're playing that game on the field, right?
That's true. You can't separate the two.
No.
Justin says
that would be a problem.
Sky says at least a little. It's a 7-year sample, so there's data on this. This isn't just within the last couple of years. So Tiffany says a little. Jason Martinez says a lot, a little, a lot. So not many nuns, right? They're putting some stock into this. At least most of our listeners are. I don't know, Austin. How do you feel about this?
Denise asked, "Can you Google their results?" And so, Jack, you were talking about this in our pre-show conversation. Not really.
So, not all quarterbacks agree, because you got to agree to make this information public. So, those who test lower, I mean, you guys believe it. They wouldn't want that to get out. That's going to hurt their stock. So, these guys that don't have scores available, I mean, you have to assume that they didn't really crush this thing. Now, they may not have performed poorly, but when you see, Anthony Richardson and some of these guys in the 90s, and then you're, above average in the 70s, I mean, how does that make you look?
Right?
Yeah.
Above average being 68 for a quarterback. And I'm reading again from Aaron Wilson, who said Bryce Young, the highest score this year at a 98. That's per Aaron Wilson's source. And you mentioned Brock Purdy was a 97 last year. Will Levis scored high. Anthony Richardson, quote, knocked it out of the park, but we don't have a number to that. And, we heard Lance Zierlein saying CJ Stroud did not, but we don't have a number attached to that either. So my answer, Jack, is I think it has to be, it definitely cannot be none. And I don't know if we have enough data on it yet to say a lot. So I'm going to go with a little. Because those are the options that we have: a lot, a little, or none. And we've got, Sam gave us some information too, that, Drew Brees has taken it and he tested at an elite level. So Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Fields all were elite scorers as well. And so, you've got the ability to have some of that data on a Drew Brees that we know was not physically gifted from a physical stature, but his mentality and his mental processing allowed him to become a Hall of Fame quarterback one day in the NFL and break a ton of records over the longevity of his career. So I think it's absolutely a little, because the commenter that said that, the game's still played on the field, that's true. You have to be able to carry out what your brain sees. I think a lot of football players, a lot of athletes in general might have quicker mental processing than what their body can do. And I'll go back to Malik Willis. I remember talking to Malik Willis in training camp, and he was saying that his brain sees it, like he's processing it, but now he had to train his feet to catch up with his brain. But what do we know about Malik Willis? Malik Willis is a really good athlete, but still his footwork needed to catch up and time up with what he was processing mentally. And that was a part of why his footwork was behind and he was struggling this past year. We don't know what Malik Willis scored in this either. So I say a little overall. Jack, what do you think?
I'm really in between a little and a lot. I think I lean more towards a lot than a little. And part of the reason why is, they recently tested 27 quarterbacks in the NFL, all active players. Okay. 13 of those that were tested had a passer rating over 90. The
Out
average
of 27.
13 out of 27 had a passer rating of at least 90. Their average score on the S2 test, 91st percentile. Okay. The other 14 with a quarterback rating below 90 or passer rating below 90, their average score was in the low 60s. Huh. So, I mean, that tells you right there. There's stats that also back this thing up, even though it is relatively new in 2015. It tells me a lot, and specifically for guys like Anthony Richardson, who, he's only started 13 games in college. For him to crush this, that's big for me if I'm a GM. I'm putting a lot of stock into that. Will Levis should do it. He's been in college for forever, been in a couple different systems, one that caters to the NFL level. So Will Levis absolutely needed to crush this. Bryce Young, on the other hand, I've heard he's been taking this every year since he was like 10 years old, which kind of defeats the purpose for me. Like, I want this to be like a one-off thing. You can only take it at the combine.
No.
And then everyone's judged fairly.
I disagree. I think you can train at this.
Well, yeah, I mean, you probably should train at it.
You can train at this and you can become better at it, right? Now, I do think there needs to be an asterisk that I took the ACT twice, right? I did better the second time than I did the first time, obviously, because I had some experience under my belt. I knew how to handle the 4-hour day, and I knew which snacks to bring at my break, and I knew what I struggled at the first time, and I got better, right? So obviously when you do something more, you get better at it. And so I think you should absolutely be allowed to train for this, because if it's going to help you on the field. So how about this, Jack? I'll put a timeout on, and I'll let you jump back into your points. Years ago, early A to Z sports, I don't even know if you were working with us at this point. We had a sponsorship one year with an eye doctor. Actually, I'm going to go see him next week because my vision's just getting terrible fast. But we had a sponsorship with them, and they have a sports cognitive vision lab in their eye doctor facility. And they go through a lot of these things, reaction time, being able to judge your focus and do some of these type of testing there. And so Zach and I did a lot of these testing. Zach did better than I did at that point. A lot of it was because I was over stressing and trying to focus too much, and I didn't do as well. But I would have done better if I got more opportunity to get comfortable with it. And if Bryce Young's been doing these type of things, then that should make him a better quarterback. That's a part of training. I think that's a good part of your development as an athlete these days, is using those technology factors to your ability.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And MB makes a good point as well here. He says, just because your brain knows where to go with the ball doesn't mean you have the physical tools to put it where you want. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks, mostly on ESPN, Dan Orlovsky coming to mind immediately, dude who knew the game. He just didn't have the goods. You gotta have the goods and the brains. Yeah. That's why finding a franchise quarterback is so tough. And there are GMs and head coaches and OCs and just all kinds of people that get fired because they can't do it in a certain time frame. But this test kind of it gives you something to go off of, at least for a quarterback's cognitive ability. So, it's just because Stroud has a low score, I'm not going to count him out. Like, this doesn't completely and totally rule out players who don't test well in this, because, you mentioned it. It could be his first time taking this test versus some of these high scorers, who've taken it a bunch of times. And we don't know, outside of Bryce Young, how many times these guys have taken it. But I don't know. For me as a GM, I need all of the data points possible to properly evaluate this position that nobody's really figured out a blueprint for. Like, evaluating quarterback prospects is the toughest thing in professional sports. It's got to be. So this test, I think, gets you one step closer to figuring out the answer there. And to see that Levis and Richardson, who the Titans could jump up to 3 and possibly test well, I feel a little bit better. I still don't feel great.
Okay.
But I feel better.
We'll get to that comment or that topic here in a second. So Nick asked, I wonder how Malik Willis's score was. I was trying to do some Googling here live on the show. I see that Malik Willis scored very high on the Wonderlic. He had a 32 reportedly on the Wonderlic at the combine a year ago. I believe the Wonderlic high score, perfect score, is a 40. And so 32 is like damn good. Like that's a legitimate, maybe it's 50, but 32 is still really good on a Wonderlic score at the NFL combine. But, I have not yet seen anything on S2 data for Malik Willis yet. Now, Ricochet Ray says Bryce Young has the best tape. I think we all agree. Bryce Young has the best tape. And once I saw the Aaron Wilson report that Bryce Young scored a 98 on his S2, and that was the highest grade of this quarterback class, you go look at the tape and you're like, yeah, that checks out. Like you can watch Bryce Young's tape and recognize that this guy would probably score high at an S2 test like we're talking about that does all these cognitive processing skills. So that makes sense to me on Bryce Young. When I watch Will Levis's tape, I don't just say, oh, that guy's going to test well there. When I watch Anthony Richardson's tape, which is limited because he only started like 13 games, I didn't see that either. CJ Stroud, I think, is interesting because who has CJ Stroud been throwing the football to? He's got Marvin Harrison Jr., who is next year's model is better than all the current models. Then you've got, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who should be a first-round pick, could be high. And then Garrett Wilson, who was the rookie of the year last year, and Chris Olave, who did pretty damn good down in New Orleans. So he's been throwing to all these dudes who are legitimate NFL wide receivers. And so in a Big Ten conference that I know, Jack, while we might be Tennessee Vandy and we might be butting heads on that, but we do know that the SEC is way better than the Big Ten. Yeah. That, CJ Stroud had one game that meant everything the past couple of years, and he lost them both to Michigan. I'm not saying that's because he had a low S2 score. I'm just saying that it's hard to judge CJ Stroud's tape because of beating up on Maryland and Rutgers defenses and all these other bad Big Ten teams.
I hear you, but when we start, judging quarterbacks based on their college team success, that's when the waters kind of get a little murky. And Stroud, just by watching him, even against bad teams, like that dude's an elite talent. We can all agree on that.
No doubt.
Like,
no doubt.
Even though that he's come up short in some big games, just like Will Levis has, and for a test that that kind of quantifies, whether or not you're too impulsive or just impulsive enough. Will Levis was probably the most impulsive quarterback that I watched last season, and you saw that with some of his turnovers and some of his flops in big time moments for him last year. So I don't know, like CJ Stroud, this isn't going to like. If I was 50-50 on Young and Stroud, I still don't know that this would make my decision for me because the mental aspect is just as important as the physical aspect. And Bryce Young, sure. I mean, that dude was improving all last year. That guy's got the good. We knew before this test that Bryce Young knows what's going on the football field.
Because the biggest question about Bryce Young is that guy is tiny. Like I was finding the PNGs for that graphic down there, and like the physical difference between the three guys towards the right and Bryce Young could not be greater. Like Bryce Young is a tiny person compared to Stroud, Richardson, and Levis, who are all physically gifted and top-notch athletes, where Bryce Young, while he has the cognitive skills and he has the passing ability, can he hold up? CJ Stroud can hold up physically, can make all the throws, has the stature, but, we haven't seen him consistently have that type of performance like Bryce Young. And then I see several comments, Jack, Brent says Stroud redeemed himself though against Georgia when he had a phenomenal game,
big time,
phenomenal game against Georgia. And then I did see, Donald at the same time says, I like Stroud, but people are putting way too much weight on the Georgia game. And that's something you have to be careful about because, hey, Jack, I'll give you a quick trivia question. Name a former Titans second round pick who had an incredible performance in the college football playoff and then upped his draft stock and did literally zero with the Titans in the NFL. Second round pick of somewhat recent memory.
Gosh, I'm gonna look bad here.
It's okay. And he did. It was a John Robinson draft. He busted on the scene in the college football playoff and then flopped completely. The chat is crushed.
Chad's got it.
Yeah, Kevin Dodd. And look, I am not saying that Kevin Dodd is and Bryce and CJ Stroud are the same from that aspect. But
no.
Again, that's a good example of Kevin Dodd having like 3 sacks in the college football playoff championship game and then being nothing in the NFL.
Yeah, back to your Bryce Young point, like, sure, he's small, but like that's now the only thing you have to worry about. With Stroud, can he read defenses like the way that he's going to have to in the NFL? Richardson, is he going to be accurate enough? Will Levis, does he have the decision making to last long in the NFL, or not put his body in harm's way like he did so often in college?
Mm-hmm.
There are multiple question marks for every single guy not named Bryce Young, which leads me to believe that Bryce Young has to be a Carolina Panther.
Yeah, I think it's leaning that way, which means CJ Stroud could be a Houston Texan, and we'll have an opportunity to really find out what this does and if he can go in the NFL. So I'm going to play the video from Lance Zierlein one more time for those who might have missed it earlier about this, and then we'll talk about 2 other quarterbacks and what it means for the Titans. And Jack, you've kind of hinted at your thoughts here, but let's hear again from Lance Zierlein on the S2 test this year for these quarterbacks.
I know that the rumors around the league, the rumors that I have heard is that CJ Stroud did not score great on this S2. And there are a lot of teams, and I don't know if the Texans are one of them, to be honest with you. There are a lot of teams who highly value the S2 test because it's a processing test, it's a decision making. We had the guy on from yesterday, right? So it has been predictive. The very best quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, those are 3 guys who scored very high on S2. Brock Purdy was the highest scorer last year, and he did well. Now, he's also on a very quarterback-friendly scheme.
Right. Yeah.
Now, the question is asked of those guys, has anyone ever become a good quarterback who scored low? The answer over the last 7 years so far has been no. No one has. And the rumor is that I've heard, not through teams but through other sources, is that C.J. Stroud's number is pretty low. And Bryce?
Pretty low. C.J. Stroud numbers is pretty low coming from Lance Zierlein there. And so once again, we've got this graphic here that Sam put together for us. The 3 quarterbacks, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis scoring very high. In Bryce Young's case, according to Aaron Wilson's sources, a 98. Aaron Wilson's sources also said that Richardson, quote, knocked it out of the park. And also that standout from Kentucky, Will Levis, scored very well on this S2 test. So, Jack, let's get to this conversation more about the Titans aspect now. Does Anthony Richardson and Will Levis scoring high on their S2 test make you more comfortable with the Titans drafting them? Does Anthony Richardson and Will Levis scoring high make you more comfortable with the Titans potentially drafting them, knowing this aspect? So we'll get to your comments here in a second. But first, let me tell you guys about Farm Bureau Health Plans. Get better with Farm Bureau Health Plans, better coverage rates and service. Learn more about a health plan for you at fbhp.com/ATOZ. Jack, yeah, you signed up with Farm Bureau Health Plans a little over a year ago as you entered your official adulthood by 26 and getting off your parents' health coverage like we've all had to do at some point, and you have to figure something out, right? Farm Bureau Health Plans can do that and make that beneficial for everybody. And being a young professional, a young adult, is the right time to join the Farm Bureau Health Plans family because they get you in as a healthy young person with a great rate that you get to hang with you throughout your entire life as things get tougher later on. So check them out, fbhp.com/ATOZ.
Farm Bureau really does make it easy, as does BetMGM. So look, if you don't have the BetMGM app, sign up using our code A to Z Sports, and you'll receive up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win that first bet. They want you to win. They want all these new customers to walk away with some money early. That's how they hook you in. But you can take advantage of this. Remember, use code A to Z Sports. You'll receive up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win that first bet. Go do it after the show. Download BetMGM. Use code A to Z Sports.
All right, guys. So asking this question now, does Anthony Richardson and Will Levis scoring high on their S2 test make you feel more comfortable about the Titans potentially drafting them? So Jack, I'm going to send you back to the comments. Is it a yes or no type of question here? But what are people saying? Because Richardson, Levis did very well with this, but maybe their tape didn't necessarily show it. So what's everybody saying here?
Troy says no. Steven says no. Chill Mode says no. Guy Mann says no. Scott Weaver, he's open to this. He's saying yes. Jonathan says no. Jeff says no. A CJ Stroud defender. This is expected. Not Levis, says Kevin. Sure, says Steven. Brad says yes. Titans Kyle, no. Mr. Jones convinced that there's been some cheating involved. I don't know how you can cheat in this test.
Cheating on the S2 test.
It's too fast of a test. You don't have time to cheat.
Mr. Jones is a conspiracy theorist, and it's not any shock to me that thinking that he thinks people can cheat on an S2 test.
Stay woke, Mr. Jones. Big time, yes, says Kaz. A little bit more, says DeMarco. Johnny Lee says yes. John says no. Let's see. Do we have any more? Titan, yes, but it seems like he's still on the fence with the question marks.
And that's a Kentucky fan right there.
Okay. See, that's what we like to see. Okay, no, says Drew. Yes, says Denise. We're just out on Levis, according to Chill Mode. Let's see. I'm not sure, but I trust Ran a lot. This may be the right answer for T. Shannon. Michael says no. More no's than yes in the chat today. Awesome.
Does that surprise you, Jack? Before you give your answer, does it surprise you that more no's than yeses? Because on the pre-show, when you were talking with Sam, Jack was like, people are going to say yes, like that it makes them feel better. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. So does it surprise you?
Point for Austin on that. I guess people are just so out on Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. And part of that may be for a bunch of Tennessee fans in here may not like the fact that they played at Florida or they played at Kentucky, but more, you dive deeper than that. They didn't play well in the SEC last year. Both of these dudes lost to Vanderbilt. I mean, they had opportunity after opportunity to showcase that they were worth taking with a top 5 pick, and they fell flat on their face just about every single time. So I understand why people are skeptical of both Levis and Richardson. But this S2 test, these scores on the S2 test, how do they not make you feel better? I mean, you just have to not believe in the test, which, like Lance Zierlein said, there hasn't been a dude who scored low and performed well in the NFL. Like, there's some consistency within these results and your play at the next level. So to me, I trust the system. I trust the data. There's really no outliers so far with this thing. And in 7 years, it's pretty impressive. So for me, it's hard not to feel better. It certainly doesn't make me feel worse to know that these two dudes that the Titans may end up taking at 3 overall if they trade up performed well. No, I think this has to make you feel better.
So Big Ten Jeff, who is the notorious Ohio State fan of the chat, says, because it's a computer test, Jack, their tapes aren't good. Tests be damned.
Whose tape isn't good?
I think he's saying Levis and Richardson don't have the quality tape like CJ Stroud does, which I think is not inaccurate, but I think
there's context behind that.
Yeah, there's variables. Like CJ Stroud should have great tape. Look at the receivers he's been throwing to the last 2 years. He should have phenomenal tape. He's got his offensive tackle is going to be a top 15 draft pick too. He had NPF that was a 3rd round pick last year on top of everything else Ohio State has offer. I'm not saying that should be knocked against CJ Stroud. I'm just saying, who does Kentucky had drafted from their offense that was around Will Levis the last couple of years?
You're some of the people around you.
Florida
you're
has
a product of your environment.
Florida has had less talent in the last couple of years offensively as Florida's had since I've been alive. Like Steve Spurrier came into Florida when he did, and they were not good, but Steve Spurrier made Florida a powerhouse, and then they've been pretty damn talented ever since, except for what's happened over the last several years. So again, I think that's the hard part. And so when I see that Levis and Richardson scored very high on these, I think it makes me feel more comfortable about Anthony Richardson more than Levis. Why? because we've only got 1 year of film on Richardson. We've only got 13 starts for Anthony Richardson. And I saw his comment the other day that he was like, I had a new quarterback coach every 6 months. And I learned a new offense, with Billy Napier coming in, and went in and started 13 games. And that's what I got. Right. He goes, I'm not making excuses, but I had a hard learning curve. And Will Levis was there for 2 years. Will Levis had an OC change from his junior year to his last year. But I think I feel more comfortable in Anthony Richardson because of the limited tape to go along with the athletic testing and now the cognitive testing. I think that means that he's got much of a higher ceiling to grow into because of the cognitive and athletic testing with the limited tape, where Will Levis, I think, is more of a finished product, and the finished product still was a lot messier than I would have liked it to be.
Yeah, no doubt. It's hard to disagree with that. I mean, we've seen Will Levis play in, let's see, 38 games in college, 38 games in his college career. Like, tape is one thing, and this test is another. Finding a balance between the two and which is more important. Obviously, I think tape is going to supersede this test, which is relatively new every single time. But when you're on the field for 38 games and people become familiar with you and the way you play and what you look for and how you react to certain situations and how pressure affects you, Levis, like, there's enough there. Like, you can kind of see where he's at mentally just by watching him at Kentucky. And sure, he didn't have the talent at Ohio State that C.J. Stroud was, so lucky to have. But
what Bryce Young had at Alabama too.
Or
right?
Bryce Young, true.
Or what Hendon Hooker had at Tennessee, right? Hendon
fair.
Hooker, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud all had better around them than Will Levis and Richardson.
And for those who came in late, we don't know Hooker or Stroud's exact score. We just know that Stroud scored low, or at least lower than he probably.
I haven't seen anything on Hendon Hooker's S2.
Yeah, so I don't know. With Levis, there's enough on film to kind of get an idea of what he is and what he sees. With Richardson, I agree. It's totally this is another data point. You need all the data points possible to properly evaluate a dude who's played in just 13 games in college. And, especially in a couple different systems. Like just like the NFL, if you have OC after OC after OC come in, it's hard to get a rhythm and kind of really figure out who you are. You're so busy adapting to this system that comes in. Mariota, I mean, that's a good example. He had to shuffle through a handful of different regimes. So, I don't know. For Levis, I think he kind of is who he is at this point. You kind of know what you're getting. Now, you put in the right system, I think that he could have success in the NFL. I mean, look, Brock Purdy, last pick in the draft, matched up with Shanahan. Looks like a match made in heaven that's going to work out for a really long time. So landing spots a lot, landing spots everything. But, maybe it helps one of these two quarterbacks, Levis or Richardson, who didn't have a lot to work with in college, who, probably won't have a lot to work with in the NFL if they're drafted by the Titans. So
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So I guess overall, there's a lot of comments here. All right, Den says Levis is the most NFL ready of these guys. I think that the NFL draft process has said that that's not correct. Rashid says, reminder, Brock Purdy scored in the 90s. Yeah, Jack, you mentioned Brock Purdy had a 97 last year. Bryce Young, according to Aaron Wilson, had a 98 this year. Let's see. Rooney asks, what is Tannehill's S2 scores? I don't think we have. That's the hard thing, is we don't have numbers on a lot of the current NFL players. But Jack, if you have it available, you can go through that. They've tested 27 current quarterbacks in the league, and they did find some interesting numbers.
Yeah, again, I'll go over. They tested 27 quarterbacks. 13 of those quarterbacks that they tested had a passer rating of 90 or better. Their average score on the S2 test was in the 91st percentile. So they absolutely dominated it. Because, again, 80 is considered elite. They were in the 91st percentile. The other 14, with a passer rating below 90, they scored in the low 60s. So there's some correlation there. And now I saw Trey Wynn ask, is it a sure thing? No. Because football is, you got to be athletic. You got to have the arm talent, the accuracy, the footwork. There's so much that goes into just the position physically, but also mentally. So
Yeah.
testing well is one thing, but there does seem to be a correlation where those who test well are really doing are crushing it on the field as well. So it's hard to just throw this test out of the window completely.
Yeah, no doubt. Kendall asked, is Levis really a Josh Allen comp? I don't necessarily think so. I think the Josh Allen comp in this draft is Anthony Richardson. In my opinion, it's a guy who doesn't have a ton of starts. Now, Josh Allen started 2 full seasons at Wyoming, where Richardson just had 1. But if you're looking at inaccuracy in athletic gifts, I think Richardson's got the lower completion percentage like Josh Allen did, but has the arm and has the physical ability that Josh Allen did, even though Anthony Richardson's is way better.
Here's the thing about that. There is no Josh Allen comp. Josh Allen is one of a kind, and there will be GMs. There will be countless GMs fired by trying to find the next Josh Allen. There will be no next Josh Allen. He is one of one. Just because, Richardson had inaccuracy issues. He's tall. He runs fast, throws far.
I'm just saying, if there is a quarterback prospect that would be the closest to Josh Allen in this class, it's Anthony Richardson, not Levis. That's my point.
Yeah, I would say that Richardson would be closer to Allen, but it's just hard for me. There's going to be so many people that get fired trying to find the next Lamar, the next Josh Allen, the next Mahomes. They just don't make them like that. Those guys come once every 20 years if you're lucky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as Trey Wynn adds, that they came from Wyoming, right? That came from the small school, not, Joe Flacco out of Delaware. That's kind of the other option of a successful quarterback who came from a no-name school that made it in the NFL, and Trey Lance trying to do the same thing. I guess Carson Wentz, he was on track to win an MVP, and then he tore his knee up in Philly, and then it just was a complete disaster ever since for our buddy Carson Wentz. So, all right. So, Jack, I guess I'm going to wrap up the S2 side of it by saying, I think when I look at Will Levis, him scoring high, but then watching him make bad decisions at Kentucky, I feel like it was because Will Levis was pressing and trying to do too much in a lot of spots. With Anthony Richardson, I just feel like it was a lack of experience, and that's why his numbers were not as impressive as they could have been. So I think I would be more comfortable with Richardson than Levis at this point, but still, I think if we're talking about the Titans having to trade away other draft capital to get one of these guys still has me overall uncomfortable with that.
Fair. That's fair. It's about finding that perfect balance. It's hard. It's really hard. Just if a quarterback doesn't play in an NFL friendly scheme in college, that learning curve is so steep. I've seen a lot of comments about Malik Willis, and kind of tying him to Anthony Richardson. Malik Willis did himself no favors by transferring out of Auburn. Absolutely none. He played in a backyard offense with Hugh Freeze. And we saw, I understand that he was a project, and I said this on the Tighten Up pod. Just because he wasn't ready to go in doesn't mean that we can't judge him off the tape that he gave us. Leaving the SEC, especially being beat out by Bo Nix, who had a great year at Oregon, but that really set him back mentally. Richardson at least has SEC experience. He's gone up against the best of the best at that level. And, you'd have to assume that the offense they ran at Florida is probably a little more pro-ready than the one that Hugh Freeze was running at Liberty, where it was run and gun, everyone's open all the time.
Yeah, Hugh Freeze is just buyer beware on any type of Hugh Freeze quarterbacks coming up. Kane, gives Sam some lunch money. He says, name some others who have scored well but failed. I think that's interesting, and I don't know if we're going to be able to find that off the top of our heads or live, because a lot of this information is not just readily available. I've tried Google searching Malik Willis S2, Hendon Hooker S2. I've tried Google searching Ryan Tannehill S2, and you just don't find it. So maybe that's something we can work on. We've got a couple weeks before the NFL draft, less than 2 actually, and we can revisit this conversation later on that. So Jack, let's talk about Jeffrey Simmons' contract, because we finally got some details on this thing, on how it impacts the Titans this year on the salary cap with some Jeffrey Simmons contract information. But first, let me tell you guys about our brand new sponsor once again, Aura. Aura, anyone can find anything on the internet, including your full name, personal email, home address, phone number, and even your relatives. How about this? I downloaded the Aura app a couple nights ago. I told you this yesterday, and Jack, they found that 30 data brokers had my info, and Aura is already actively removing my info from 25 of them. 6 of them have already been processed and completed. And data brokers profit by selling your information to robocallers, telemarketers, spammers, and anyone else. Just the most annoying things that you get, spam calls and spam emails. You're like, well, I didn't sign up for that. That's what the data brokers are doing. But our sponsor, Aura, will identify those data brokers who are exposing your information and automatically submit to opt out of requests on your behalf, including those junk mail and telemarketer lists. Aura's services also feature a VPN, password manager, real-time credit and identity theft monitoring, internet parental controls, and protects your devices from malware. Aura has almost every internet safety tool you've ever needed, all inside of one app. So download that app today and let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up for Aura right now, we'll give you a 2-week free trial with our link, aura.com/ATOZ. That's aura.com/ATOZ, aura.com/ATOZ for a 2-week free trial.
The NFL draft is right around the corner, and BetMGM has plenty of draft props ready and available to be bet on. It's the hardest time of the year for sports books to turn a profit. And with the NFL draft coming around, you set your notifications on for Schefter, for Pelissero, for all these dudes. You may get some intel before they can move that line over at BetMGM. So make sure you have an account over there so you're set up to win on the NFL draft. Use our code ATOZ Sports, and you'll receive up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win that first bet. A lot of plus money odds. Who's going to be the first quarterback taken? Who's going to be the first receiver taken? Which defensive player goes first? So many different ways to bet the NFL draft, and BetMGM lays it all out. It's so easy to find. It's so easy to understand for you new users. But make sure you use our promo code ATOZ Sports so you can receive up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win that first bet.
That's right. A to Z Sports here live on this Friday. We'll get to our Ain't That Good news later on in the show. But Jack, we finally got some details on Jeffrey Simmons' contract breakdown. We knew the totals, right? We knew the big $94 million and $66 million guaranteed through 2027. But how did it help the Titans this year? Well, we've got it now. So here's the year-by-year cap hits on the seasons for Jeffrey Simmons' extension. So this is where the Titans, we knew they could save some money on the cap in 2023. By extending Jeffrey Simmons, they did that. And so they moved his $10.7 million cap hit with his 5th-year option down to $6.35 million. And then that cap hit kind of explodes moving forward to 23 mil, 21, 25, and then 28 moving forward. So I think that's a big deal to save over $4 million on the cap this season, Jack, because the Titans just had roughly $7 million in cap space, and we knew that $4 million or so was going to have to go towards their draft picks. And so now they've got a little extra wiggle room overall in their cap space. And Sam put this together for A2Zsports.com. You can go read it afterwards. But the Titans now 15th in the NFL with roughly $11 million in cap space.
Yeah, that's interesting that they kind of, moved his cap hit for 2023 back. Maybe they've got another free agency move up their sleeve. Again, you have to have a certain amount of money to be able to pay your draft class, and picking at a number 11 overall, that draft pick's going to be worth a whole lot more than the dudes you've been drafted in the mid to late 20s over these last few years. So you got to set yourself up for that. But man, $28 million down the road. I feel like, in the front office, though, especially with good GMs, you can kind of kick that salary cap can on down the road, add a couple of void years, spread it all out later. It's not really an issue now. It may become an issue later, but I don't know. Look, Big Jeff needed to get paid. It's the cost of having an elite player at his position, and the Titans should be happy to pay that man his money.
Yeah, for sure. And so, you've got Well, now it went away. I got to go back to Sam's article where he had that breakdown. So go check that out at A2ZSports.com. Sam did a phenomenal job via overthecap.com of getting Jeffrey Simmons' contract breakdown and really mapping it out to see what the Titans have for him over the next several years. And so, the signing bonus is $4.8 million spread out each year on the cap. And so when you look at the 6.35 mil cap hit for Jeff this year, 4.8 of it is the signing bonus and only a $1.1 million base salary. That's because Big Jeff with this contract just got $24 million in his pocket this month. How about that, guys? Like, NFL signing bonuses are just bonkers to me because they have to be paid out in full in 21 days. So Big Jeff signed his deal on Tuesday. He put that pen to, I guess it was Wednesday, put that pen to paper, meaning that he's going to have $24 million dropped into his bank account in the next 21 days, which is just incredible. So that's why they can make his base salary 1.1 mil and get away with the low cap hit this year before his base salary jumps to 16 million next year, then to 17, then to 20, then to $23 million base salaries where the team doesn't have that cap flexibility on the cap space.
That's the Stan Kroenke loophole that we talked about, I believe, last year. You just you give these stars a bunch of money up front on signing bonuses, a lot of guaranteed stuff up there. You can kind of manipulate the cap hits on down the road. Now, the Rooster's eventually going to, or what is it? The Rooster's going to come home to roost. That doesn't sound right. Somebody's going to come home to roost, and it's some type of bird.
I don't understand that. I don't know what that means. I don't know the origin of that saying, but yeah, sure.
Anyways, so like Jeffrey Simmons, there's a lot of money to be paid. You know, a lot of cap hit that's going to be dealt out to Simmons in the next few years, but a lot of the money is going to be coming off the Titans' books. Like Ryan Tannehill, you figure he's not going to be here past this season. Some of these heavier contracts, Kevin Byard comes to mind. Who knows what their future is in Tennessee, but you're going to be paying Jeffrey Simmons a lot of money. But thankfully, or, depending on how you view Tannehill, you're going to be able to afford that monster cap. And it's really not going to set you back and limit you from doing what you need to do and spending the amount of money you need to spend to bring in more talent around Simmons in this defense.
Yeah, for sure. And, the quarterback's a big deal. The cap should continue to go up. Chickens come home.
There we go. God, how did I miss that?
You. Yeah, I don't know. Kindle drops a super chat, lunch money in here saying either trade up for a quarterback or trade back to hoard picks for next year because not going to be in this spot again for a few years. Thanks for all you guys do. And, Kindle, you got a point. And I think Zach has talked a lot about this point is that the Titans, if Tannehill is the starter this year, and if he stays healthy, unlike they were able to keep him healthy last year, the Titans should not be picking 11th or anywhere near 11th with a healthy Tannehill and Henry and this defense. They should be gunning for the division title and be picking around late teens or early 20s if the current stars stay healthy, right? And Tannehill didn't get hurt because it's his fault. Tannehill got hurt because of Dennis Daly and the other offensive line issues. So, it is a good point by Kindle there, but that's why it's fascinating. Here in a couple of weeks, we'll figure out how it happens.
Yeah, and before that, Tannehill was the most durable quarterback in Titans history. I mean, he broke Steve McNair's record for consecutive starts. So this hadn't been an issue until last season. So there is hope that, he'll be able to suit up and play a full season. And the Titans still have a roster that's capable of, winning the AFC South. Like, we've all got a bad taste in our mouths from how last season ended. But this defense is top 10 when they're healthy. And, with a good offensive line or even an average offensive line, we've seen Derrick Henry, do a whole lot with not much. So I've got hope. I've still got high hopes for next year, but they're going to need to hit it big in the draft. They got to find a first rounder that's going to contribute. Traylon Burks has to step up. Kyle Phillips feels like they're drafting Kyle Phillips all over again because they never got him at all last year.
Yeah, redshirt year, right? Absolutely. A to Z Sports here live on this Friday. Jack, let's wrap up this Friday show and send it to Ain't That Good News. We want to hear your good news, so drop your good news in the chat, and we'll get to it here in a second. But first, let me tell you guys about the Bone and Joint Institute. Speaking of Ryan Tannehill's injuries, did Ryan Tannehill get like the announcer free throw streak jinx? Like, oh, so-and-so has hit, 12 free throws in a row in crunch time. Boom, clank, misses. That's kind of what it feels like with Ryan Tannehill's injury and the Steve McNair start streak. But anyway, the Bone and Joint Institute can take care of you whenever you get hurt in life. Go see him in Franklin. If you've got that nagging pain, your back, maybe a knee, an old injury that's doesn't go away, it's crept back up. Don't just like sit through it and sit through pain and just be like, that's just how life works. No, go get it fixed. Go check it out. Go see what the Bone and Joint Institute can do to help you out and get healthier. That's the Bone and Joint Institute in Franklin, the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine care, boneandjointtn.org.
The NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, they're in full swing. If you don't have a team in action but want some skin in the game, BetMGM is the perfect place to get your fix. So download BetMGM app for you, the BetMGM app for you new users. You can use our code A to Z Sports. That's ATOZ Sports. And you'll receive up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win that first bet. Grizzlies Lakers should be awesome. Maybe you ride with the Grizzlies early on. See how they play at home in the grindhouse. Well, you got to do it on BetMGM. So use our code A to Z Sports and receive up to $1,000 back in bonus bets and get started off in the green.
There you go. Let's get the good news. To end the show today, excuse me. I appreciate Jack. Thanks for jumping in here. Sam came down a little under the weather last night, but Jack ready to go, Johnny on the spot. And we'll talk more. Let's do next week. I think we'll start discussing the NFL draft plans we have in store with Jack involved. Very excited for that. But also, while we're at it, just go check out the Tighten Up podcast with Jack and Austin Huff. They do a great job coming out every Wednesday on the A to Z Sports podcast network, wherever you get your podcast. So ain't that good news? I'm going to go to Eric. Eric says good news, starts his new job Monday. Life is good with slow pitch softball starting this week. Denise says good news, his cousin is off the walker and on a cane, recovery little by little. Great news there for how that goes. Just to answer a question here, Champ asked how old is Hooker. Hendon Hooker is 25 years old. Will Levis is 24 years old, and that goes under the radar a little bit. Mr. Jones just says Grizz in 4. Matt says good news, Austin is replacing the one-chip challenge with the Take the S2 challenge in the Magic Bucket.
That's great. Good stuff, Matt.
So we would have to, I saw somebody commented this and was like, Austin, what's your S2 score? And like, if this was me a few years ago, I would have been like, yeah, let's go take it. Let's go do this. But I don't want to put myself out there like that to set myself up to fail.
You have to, it can't be taken on just a, regular old laptop. You have to have a special device, like a special tablet.
Yeah, we got to we'd have to find somewhere to do it. And I'm sure we could do it and partner up with them and give them some promotion and see how that works and see how good or poorly we do on the S2 test.
It's a Nashville-based test. I'm sure they got one around.
Yeah, you're a Vandy guy. You just call them up, right? You guys
I can do that. I've got those connections.
There you go. All right, so more good news. Jeff Rubel says, good news, spring game galore tomorrow. Going to feel like a fall Saturday. Can't wait. Yeah, kind of. I mean, spring games are fun, but feel like a fall Saturday? Maybe not. But yeah, good news. We will be at the orange and white game tomorrow. Well, not me, but Zach Reagan and Charlie Burris will be at the orange and white game tomorrow in Knoxville. So they'll have some live reaction after all of that is wrapped up. Mr. Jones says, good news. The Titans are going to draft Hendon Hooker. Well, we'll see when that happens.
Is that good news?
Yeah. And M. Knight says, wish I had good news. It has not been my week. Well, I hope next week is better overall. Trey says he's up for a job that could bring a big jump in money, impact, etc. Could be cool. T's and P's appreciated. So hopefully,
Trey.
Yeah, hopefully you get good news on that for maybe later on. Let's see, Jack, do you have good news this week?
I do have good news. Oh, I'm so happy that I came in on a Good News Friday, Austin.
All right.
The Vanderbilt Commodores baseball team is dominating SEC play. They're 11-1. They've got a big-time home series this weekend against the top 10 South Carolina team. Vandy's down a couple arms. They're resting some of their aces. Hopefully it's just fatigue. But Vanderbilt baseball is back on top in their rightful position in the SEC. It's been an awesome year so far in the SEC. I know that Tennessee fans are probably a little down on their season, but it's still early, and Ole Miss had a bad season, came out to win it all last year. So there's plenty of time to get back in this thing. The talent at the SEC level this year is absolutely insane. The transfer portal has really contributed to that. It's like minor league baseball at this point. I mean, it's a feeder system to the bigs, not just the minors. So if you can this weekend, turn on SEC Network. There's going to be a lot of great games, plenty of good series going on. SEC baseball, and finally the weather. The weather is here. It's SEC baseball ready. It's just a good time to be alive.
There you go. Bork says Jack is out of his parents' house, so that's good news. Well, the only reason why you were at your parents' house is because you didn't have internet at your place
for 11 days.
Yeah.
I live in West Nashville, like close to Green Hills, and a tree fell on the power line. We were down for 11 days. I had to go to my grandparents' house, not even my parents' house.
When you have to go to your grandparents' house for Wi-Fi, something's weird, right?
It's like an 11-day staycation too. It's like, oh man, I'm really starting to feel like, I need to go somewhere else.
Yeah, that was it. We were like constantly that was back when they had that crazy windstorm in Nashville, and Jack was like giving me daily updates. Like day 7, they said they're going to come out to check it, but I don't know. They said that on day 5 too.
It was so bad. But yeah, at my grandparents' house, there's not as many people on the internet over there than there would be at my parents' house, which is, I got 2 brothers and it's chaos.
You need peace and quiet to get
exactly.
All right, guys. My good news, I got a couple, right? And this one's kind of a impromptu good news. So, Jack, we were getting ready to hit go on the show today, and I was sitting here like trying my hardest for like 2 minutes to fight off a sneeze. Yeah. I did it. We're an hour and 6 minutes into the show, and I've held off this same sneeze the entire time. It's crept up. It's crept up a few times, but I've been able to just hold it in and not let it happen, because sneezing on air is one of the most uncomfortable things you can do, because you can't stop it. You know it's about to happen, and then you don't know what it's going to look like or sound like when it does happen. So I've literally held off this sneeze, this tingling in my nose, for now an hour and 7 minutes successfully. So that is one aspect of my good news.
That's great news. I've gotten good at holding them in. I can hold sneezes in. I perfected it right out of college when I was doing part-time with WNSR. Whenever we were on the air and I had a sneeze come in that studio, I mean, you're going to sneeze. It's a little dusty sometimes. And it's right above, this restaurant with great smelling food, but I had to hold it in, and it hurts a little. And people say it's bad for you, but once you're good at it, it really, it's an underrated aspect of talking behind a microphone.
Yes.
Especially since that microphone's not covered in snot and boogers.
That's right. Absolutely. So I was able to hold in the sneeze now for an hour and 8 minutes. My actual good news before the sneeze fight, tomorrow, Easter was last weekend, but I'm going to be the Easter Bunny tomorrow at a friend's party. So they're having like an Easter egg hunt. It's a week delayed because of scheduling. But I get to participate as the Easter Bunny at a kid's party to go do, pictures and stuff. But I find it fun to be the Easter Bunny and be like the anonymous mascot at the party, but also do like funny things like go up and down the slide on the play set and just, be a goof and, see what happens. So I get to be the Easter Bunny tomorrow. This is year 2 of me being the Easter Bunny.
Yeah, just don't pull a T-rack and run over a kid in a little cart.
Last year I tried to get on the big wheel in the Easter outfit, and it didn't really work that well. But again, it could be fun. So I had fun with it last year. So
you could play a good Easter Bunny. I could see that happening.
Oh yeah. I've always kind of thought being a mascot would be fun. Just the anonymous the mask, the head, right, allows you to just do whatever you want without consequences to an extent.
Random question to end the show. Are you pro peeps or anti peeps?
Anti.
Yep, that's the right answer.
We got some peeps this year, and it was a 4-pack. It was in like a package of stuff, right? And I just opened the peeps, and I was like, I'm just gonna eat one just to see if I really remember how bad it is. And I ate one, and I remembered how bad it was. So anti peeps on that one. I did eat an entire chocolate bunny though, in one sitting.
You're on the right side of history there.
There we go. All right, guys, that's it for us this week. We'll be back next week, inching closer and closer to the NFL draft. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Make sure you give us a thumbs up, give us a like on the show before you go. Subscribe to our channel. I saw Kendall celebrating a milestone on his YouTube channel, so that's awesome. We're trying to get to 12,000 subscribers on our YouTube, trying to get to 100K followers on our Facebook. So check us out and like the show before you go. We'd appreciate that. Have a great weekend. Buck Rising, we'll see you Sunday night, and we'll see you Monday morning. Appreciate it as always.